So thank you guys for coming to my talk today. I am talking about open source web mapping libraries. And by the way, today is Find Your Inner Nerd Day. So what better way to celebrate than come to a coding conference. So happy Find Your Inner Nerd Day. All right, so before I get into all of the coding stuff, by the way, I will have a repo that I'm going to bring up here in a few minutes. So if you do have your laptops, you can follow along with some of the code samples that I'll be doing. Yeah. All right. Okay, so just a little bit about me. My name is Courtney Yatteau, and I am a developer advocate at Esri. Before I started at Esri, I've been at Esri for 2 years now. Before that, I was a teacher, and I taught high school math and computer science. I did that for 10 years, and then I decided to transition into tech. So it's been a pretty fun experience. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. The agenda here is what we're going to be going through, and hopefully I can get through as much as possible in 30 minutes. We're going to start with just some basics, like key concepts and vocabulary for mapping, and then I'll get into each of the different mapping libraries, and we'll do some code samples with those. And then I will also show a little bit of ArcGIS Esri integrations that work with these open source mapping libraries. And then finally, I will go through a few real world examples if I have time. And by the way, you can scan the QR code or go to this link if you want to follow along with any of the coding stuff that I'm about to do. And I will show this link again at the end in case you want to reference it later. The slides are also there. Okay, so let's get into some key concepts vocab. So visualization, maps really do take complex data and help us visualize things. Now at a simplest level, that is something just like dots on a map, right? Now when you have a lot of dots on a map, using something like clustering can help you visualize it a bit better and help you digest that information a bit easier. So that's what's happening here. And one of our samples that we'll do in a few minutes, we'll be demonstrating that. All right. Next is navigation. So apps like Google Maps is a common one that a lot of us use, or Apple Maps. They do help us go from point A to point B, whether that's like walking or driving or even flying. So, and it's another good reason to use maps. Another one is mapping with communication. So maps and apps like Uber Eats and Snapchat can enable your real-time location tracking and then follow people around. All right. And finally, another good role for mapping is prediction. So maps can forecast the future, whether predicting storm paths or traffic, or that's the storm paths. Yeah, so they will help us, prepare. Right. Okay, so one key concept that really is important for mapping is understanding the concept of how data can be placed onto maps. And that is through what we call layers. A lot of times you'll be hearing me say feature layers, so a lot of times we'll call data a feature layer, and that could be anything from points on a map to lines on a map. We call them polylines or polygons, or to be like shapes or sections. And then another key concept is geocoding. Geocoding really is just the process of converting addresses into geographic coordinates. So address to longitude and latitude. All right. So we're going to go through some commonalities of the 3 mapping libraries that we're going to be looking at today, which are Leaflet, MapLibre GL JS, and OpenLayers. So has anyone ever used one of these before? Nice, awesome. So the first thing is the core technology. So all of these are built with JavaScript, and they are compatible with HTML, CSS.
They are also very compatible with your JavaScript frameworks as well. And they work across all modern browsers. Okay, they are all open source, of course, name of the talk that I have here. And they're community driven, modifiable, meaning you can actually submit different things on GitHub to modify the code or help make the library better. And they all are pretty easy to learn. Now we will see that I'm going to go in a progression that kind of takes us through the easiest, which really I think is Leaflet. And then we'll look at MapLibre, and then we'll look at OpenLayers, which OpenLayers you'll come to find is more for the GIS analyst people. GIS, by the way, Geographic Information Systems. Okay, but they all do have extensive documentation to help you learn. All right, and then finally, key features. So they are very interactive and friendly, customizable, as you'll see. We're going to do some visualizations, and they all use the Web Mercator projection, which is the common projection that we are typically used to seeing on a map. All right. Okay, so we're getting into Leaflet now. So I'm about to do a little code here in a minute. Leaflet is the lightest weight of the 3 libraries that we're looking at, and they have tons of plugins. We're going to use a few. Leaflet at its core is pretty simple, again, lightweight. It doesn't have a ton to it. You're able to add points and lines and those kind of things. But if you want to extend the functionality, that's really where the plugins come into play. And it really does focus on that simplicity. Okay. All right, so we're going to do a simple map demo, and I'm going to be doing this for each 3 of the libraries. So again, if you're on that repo, you can see the code that I'm about to put in here. Now, I just made a few key bindings to bring this up. So let me get that up here. There we go. Okay, bump that up a little bit. Cool. All right, so let me talk through just a bit of the structure of this, and each one of these structures for these simple demos is the same. So really the first thing you need to do is bring in your CSS and your JavaScript. I've done that through CDN. Of course, you could do that through ES modules or common modules. And yeah, so once I brought those in, that enables us to be able to use Leaflet. The next thing that is going to be common among the 3 is I've set the CSS map. The height is just 100%, or the 100% of the view height, essentially. So that just enables it to take up the entire screen. Also, body, no margin or padding. Okay, another common thing among all 3 is we just set up a div and set the ID equal to map. Okay, now what's going to happen here is I'm going to go ahead and refresh this. So notice that we do see right here the zoom buttons, and then down here at the bottom it says Leaflet, but there's obviously no map yet because I haven't put in the actual location or the zoom, and I also have not given it a tile layer, so we'll need to do that. So what I've done is I've made another key binding for this area. There we go. And notice again, let me undo that real quick. The Leaflet is latitude, comma, longitude. The other 2 libraries are going to be the other way around. So just keep that in mind. And we could get into a debate about which one's correct, but we're not going to do that. Okay, now the zoom level, I just set it to 12. Zoom can go anywhere from about 0 to 20-ish, depending on the library. Yeah, and then we still don't see anything yet because I need to give it a tile layer, so let's do that. All right, there we go. Okay, so there's our map. And this is using the OpenStreetMap tile layer, which is a very common user-friendly base map. And we call these base maps because they are literally the foundation of your map. Okay. Now, what we can do is, let's see, we can use this other one to give it a different style. There we go. Okay. All right, so this is just another one I found online. Now, by the way, if you're looking these up, these are called raster or tile layers. And they really are just, see, as you can see, it's kind of having trouble loading a bit, but they are really just tiles, PNGs, literally PNGs, as you could see in the URL there. So yeah, cool. All right, so that's the first demo. Just to recap real quick of what we just did, you've got your div ID there, and then you've got your set view, which initializes the map's center view, and then you've got the latitude and longitude. And again, Leaflet does it in that order. And then a zoom level, that's between 0 and approximately 19 for Leaflet. Okay, and then you also need to set your tile layer in order to actually visualize the map. And again, these are raster tiles in the form of PNGs. And got to add it to the map in order for it to actually show up. All right, cool. So we're going to go into an Esri Leaflet demo now. Esri Leaflet is an open source library that comes in the form of plugins that Esri has actually created. And so it really, again, just extends the functionality of Leaflet. So let's see. This map right here is the exact same map that we just saw, so I haven't done anything else to it yet. But what I've done is in this code, I've brought in several different things. I've brought in clustering for Leaflet, the Esri Leaflet geocoder. So there's a lot of things I brought in through CDN up here at the top. So those are going to enable me to use the following things. First thing is, I'm going to enable what's called the search control. Okay, now once I do that, and refresh it, we see this little location search button. Okay, so I go ahead and type something, and it'll start searching around the area. Now, by default, the map bounds are actually being used when I use this search feature. So as you can see, I started typing PAR. Normally, if the map bounds were not set to just the viewing window, you would think probably something like Paris would come up. Right? So I can enable that, or disable that really, by using use map bounds. Okay, so now when I go to type now, we can see that really Paris is the first one that comes up, no longer using the map bounds. All right, another fun thing is you could change the position of where this is located as well. And there's many different parameters you could use with this library. You can just go to the it's at developers.arcgis.com, and I've actually put all those links in the GitHub repo as well. Cool, all right, so another fun thing is I can enable a pop-up to actually come up, a marker and a pop-up when I search for a place. So I'm gonna go ahead and search, let's just search for Paris again, just for fun. There we go, and when I click on it, it says Paris. All right, a few other things that I wanna show, let's see. I'm gonna skip these for now, but you can test them out. You would just use those inside of the providers. All right, so the next thing I want to show here is actually using, this is kind of cool. Again, feature layers are sets of data, right? So what I've done here is this feature layer that I have is actually all the different schools in the US. So when I take this and use it inside of my providers, I'll uncomment that out. There we go. Got it. Okay, so now when I go to search, okay, we will see underneath the places and addresses, we also are querying or searching through that feature layer. And that is the feature layer, again, of all the schools. So one fun thing I wanted to show is, I'll take away the map bounds real quick. So I'm going to just focus in on this Greenville area. And then let me look up a school. Okay, so I actually went to Malden Middle School and High School because I used to live in this area. So there we go. Kind of fun. All right. So there's a lot of other things you can do with this. I'm going to skip them for now just for the sake of time. But you could change the way that those schools come in, the formatting of them. So for instance, I could show that feature layer contains a lot of metadata. It contains things like the number of students at the school, specific to grade level even, and that kind of thing. So you could throw that information in there too, if you wanted. And you could also search through by those different parameters. So you could say, okay, I want to find all the schools that are, say, 1,000 students or more, or something like that. And we're going to do something similar with MapLibre in a few minutes. Okay, all right. I think I'm going to go ahead and just show this clustering. So the clustering I talked about a few minutes ago of all the schools. Let me show that real quick. There we go. Okay, so this is all the schools in the US. And as I zoom out, you'll see it's handling all of these features using clustering. Now, if I were to show you all the features without clustering, it would take a really long time to load. And I'll talk more about that soon. Okay. All right, so brief overview of what I just went through real quick. The GeoSearch control here, you had the ArcGIS Online Provider, which is actually what was giving the addresses, like when I typed in Paris, and then the feature layer provider, which is how you search through that feature layer of the schools. Okay, and then you've got your required and optional parameters that I've shown. I showed most of these. There are plenty more. Again, you can find the link on the repo. And then the clustering, the feature layer, I didn't actually show these other parameters, but there's plenty of information online that you can read about actually showing like disable clustering at zoom level. So if you go into a zoom level at 8 or higher, it will no longer cluster them. Essentially, that's the kind of thing. Okay. All right, let's get into MapLibre. So MapLibre GL JS, and by the way, I make that distinction because MapLibre also has a native library for mobile. Yeah, so it is a fork of Mapbox, Mapbox 1.x. So back when Mapbox went closed source, developers said, hey, we want to keep an open source version of this. So they created MapLibre. It is renders the images through WebGL, so it handles, instead of using like raster tiles, it handles what's called vector tiles really well. And that's just, it's a little different. It's not PNGs. It's just a different way of bringing in the data on the base map or on layers. It's got a lot of styling, customization, and that kind of thing. All right, so let's take a look. Okay, so got a key binding here. Okay, awesome. All right, so again, we've got all of the same stuff pretty much as we did with Leaflet. It's just MapLibre. We've got our div for the map. And the way that you create a map in MapLibre is like this. Zoom in just a little bit. Okay, so we are currently not seeing anything because we have not set that longitude and latitude. And once again, it uses the opposite of what, uses the opposite of what Leaflet does. So by setting what was the Greenville area, if I just plug it in that way, it goes to somewhere totally different because we got to do longitude, comma, latitude. So let's change that. Okay. Now this tile layer that I'm using is a really simple one. You can see there's not a lot of like features to it. It doesn't even have like the US broken down into states. So I'm going to go ahead and use a different one that I created from MapTiler. And FYI, there is an API key attached to this. It's going to be disabled after this talk, so. All right, let's take a look. Oh, that looks much better. Right? That's pretty cool. Okay, let me zoom in a bit just to show that we're in this area. Yeah, awesome. Okay, so again, this is using actually what's called vector tiles instead of raster tiles, and they are handled really as bringing in things like information about the points and the lines and all the different like features through vector data. And it is done through a style.json URL. Okay. All right, so pretty much everything I just said, just an overview of all of that. And MapLibre does have an extended zoom level just a bit, around 22. Okay, all right. Next one. So the next one, this one is using it's using ArcGIS REST.js. So this is actually another open source library that Esri did create in order to bring in different location services that Esri provides. So it's a way of you still being able to use your open source mapping library, but getting to use all of the fun functionality and extended stuff that Esri offers. So we do that through some feature layer stuff in this example and a custom vector-based map layer. Let me start with that. So this is a custom vector-based map layer. And let me place that in the style here. Awesome. Refresh. Oh, wrong one. This one. There it is. Okay, so this is just a custom created base map layer, and this was done through what's called the Vector Tile Style Editor, VTSE. And what I did here is this one is actually what I called a popcorn style. So I can just take, after I created it, I can take that item ID from the URL and I can plug it in to my URL here in my demo. And then we should see our popcorn style on our map. There it is. So it's a really fun, cool tool to be able to use to create all sorts of different visualizations. Play around with the colors, you can get very specific, change the little icons and things. Okay, so one key thing I want to talk to you about real quick is feature layers. Feature layers that come through ArcGIS REST.js, they are limited to only the first 2,000 features, because the way that feature layer data comes in is directly from the server, and it takes a lot of time to process all of that. So if you notice, I just added a feature layer, but we don't see anything. And the reason is, it's because it's only the first 2,000, which it's alphabetized, really. So you're going to see the ones in Alabama and Alaska. So, but there's a way to get around that, and you can simply use what's called this offset, result offset, and result record count. And that'll just keep querying until you get all of the features. Now that is going to bog down this quite a bit, so I'm going to go ahead and not enable that right now. I don't want to have to wait. But just so you know, you are able to do that. Now, one cool thing about this is you're actually able to, I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom, you can actually convert feature layers into vector tile layers. You can do that through the ArcGIS interface. And by doing that, it creates these tiles, it pre-processes the data and creates tiles, and then it actually handles loading that set of data on the client and not on the server. So that takes off a lot of the load time, and it makes it much easier. So if I load this vector tile layer, we should be able to see all the schools now, and that was very fast, right? It's going to be much faster. And also notice we didn't have to do the result offset. Cool. All right, there's a couple other things that, again, I encourage you to just go to my repo to play around with it. I'm going to skip them for time, but you are able to query feature layers, look for schools, say specifically by student to teacher ratio or the school level, that kind of thing. Okay. All right, just a brief overview of what I just went through. Pretty much said all of this. The only thing I didn't really point out was the visualized features here, and that's really just enabling a pop-up. So, okay. All right, OpenLayers. This is the last library. So it supports many different map formats. Again, it's more of the GIS heavy one. So it's going to be able to handle different advanced geospatial things. It can handle multi-projections, so other than Web Mercator. But because of this, it does actually require you to use a special extra little something. When you bring in that longitude and latitude, you just have to convert it. It's not too bad, but it's all in their documentation. It's just a little something extra. So let's see that. Okay, brought that in. Go to the OpenLayers one. There it is. Okay. All right. So again, same stuff as the other ones: the CDN, the map, the body, all the styling, the div for the map. All right. And then the way that you do this is I'm using again the open source or the open library. I forget what the name of it was now, but anyway, it's that same layer that I was using in the other ones. And then I've also set the view here. Again, longitude, comma, latitude, and a zoom level. So just to show a different layer type, because OpenLayers is able to handle different layer types pretty well. And these are raster tiles, again, just so you know. So these are not the vector tiles that I was talking about, like with MapLibre. All right. So this is what's called a WMS layer, and this is showing some imagery from the USGS imagery. So yeah, just a little something fun. Also, I made this little fun app that you can actually visualize. You have that OpenStreetMap, there's the name that I was looking for earlier. You've got that OpenStreetMap base map layer, and you can visualize putting that imagery on top of it. Great. All right, I've got one last demo I'm gonna do, and then we'll be good. All right, so just all the basic setup there. All right, let's do the ArcGIS one. Again, this is using ArcGIS REST.js. And so we have, I've enabled some pop-ups. I brought in, this is a fun library. It's called the demographics library, and it really allows you to see different data, like local data, demographics about an area. So in order to enable this, let me just uncomment this out real quick. The default is going to be your traditional population data, like males and females, household, number of households in the area, and average household size. And let me bring this up real quick, okay? It's in a 1 mile radius, that is the default. So when I click on the map, we should be able to see the information about that 1 mile radius area. There's a lot of fun other variables. For the sake of time, I'm not going to bring it up, but you can see here, you could throw these analysis variables into right underneath this authentication, and you'd be able to see how many households, say, have pets, or how many households have like 2 dogs or something, or how many people are married in the 1 mile radius area. There's a lot of fun stuff. Okay, that was my last demo. Almost done here. This is really just talking or kind of giving you all that code breakdown again. All right, so just for the sake of time, I will tell you that these are just some fun real world applications that are using each one of these different libraries. Now there's plenty out there. These are just one for each that I found. Now the way I was able to find that, I'll show you real quick. One of them is I was able to go to inspect the, so this is Craigslist. When I click use map, actually I didn't even have to inspect this. You can literally see it says Leaflet right down here. But some of them you do have to go into the dev tools to inspect the map, and then you could see which one it's using. A lot of times it'll say like OL for OpenLayers. Awesome, all right. So a summary, Leaflet, very lightweight and easy to use. If you just want to throw a couple dots on the map, that's probably your best bet. Larger data sets though, you're probably gonna want to use it for MapLibre. Yeah, and the vector-based maps. So that's definitely a big strength of MapLibre, is using vector tile layers and vector-based maps. And then finally, OpenLayers is really more for that GIS analyst. It handles multiple layers pretty well, like the imagery and that kind of thing. But it does have a bit of a steeper learning curve. And that's it. Awesome. All right, thank you guys so much.